This 1974 Alfa Romeo Montreal is currently advertised for sale in Sydney, Australia. The current seller has had the car for around 10 years, and when we turned up to have a look at the car, he actually had two of these sitting in the driveway. The other one, the silver car over there, is one that he's had imported from the UK, another right-hand drive example, and he's planning on doing that one up, but wants to sell the gold car. Now, there were less than 4,000 of these cars built worldwide, and of course only a few hundred in right-hand drive, and Australia got even fewer of those. I think less than 50 were actually delivered here. Now, there have been some imports since, and that silver example we looked at is one that's come from the UK, but this particular car is an Australian delivered example, and we'll show you the compliance plate and some of the documentation a bit later. The Alfa Montreal was a bit of a forgotten supercar of the era. And over the last 15 years, a lot of people have been writing about these cars, and 15 years ago people were saying, well, why aren't they becoming more desirable? Why aren't prices rising? And it's ended up becoming a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy for these cars, and prices are on the rise. In fact, the other car that's currently advertised in Australia is asking $210,000 on car sales at the moment, so prices really are getting up there for some of these examples. And despite the low production numbers of these cars worldwide, there's a huge international following, and there's a great website you can check out, alfamontreal.info. It's got every single technical specification you could want to know about one of these cars, so if you're looking at getting one, I definitely recommend checking out that site. So as you'd expect for a Bertone design, it's an absolutely stunning looking car, and this one's finished in metallic gold. Around the front here, one of the unique features that people love are these vents over the lights. These flip down and under the headlights when you turn the headlights on. Now, it does have this central scoop here, but this really is for show, and it's just to hide sort of or integrate with the hump in the middle of the bonnet there. Now, when the current owner purchased this car, they had the paint redone. This is the original colour. It's not the original paint, but it's turned out pretty well for a paint job that's now over 10 years old, or around 10 years old. It's pretty well done. Now, one of the best features of this car and its Bertone design is this C-pillar here, or what's really almost a B-pillar behind the door with these enormous vents. And this is what appeared on the concept car that was at the '67 Montreal Expo, and they retained it for the production car. Now, it serves no purpose in terms of cooling and things, but it does allow ventilation from inside the cabin. Now, it's a very unique design in itself from Bertone, but you can see so many other cars of the era that have been taken into the design. There's a bit of an E-Type Jag look, there's a bit of a Toyota 2000 GT look to the whole thing, but then you come down the back here, and if you look particularly at the back corner of the car and the taillights, there's almost a bit of 240Z as well, and that's something that I saw on Jay Leno's Garage. He mentioned that in his video, and if you haven't seen that video, I've put a link below to it where he goes through the features of the Montreal that he's got. So having a look inside now, and the doors open really nicely, close really nicely on this car. Now, the trim, I'm told, has been redone in the original material. It's actually in very nice condition. The carpets are also in great condition. Some parts of them just need a bit of a clean up, but overall really, really nice. Now, an interesting fact that the seller told me, apparently in right-hand drive cars, this part of the back shelf here was actually pushed back by about 10 centimetres, as opposed to left-hand drive cars which sit out around here 10 centimetres further. Now, I'd be interested to get your comments on that. I believe it's the same position in the right-hand drive example that we have in the silver car there, the British example, but apparently in left-hand drive cars this was further out to allow for taller drivers in right-hand drive markets, interestingly. Now, inside the car there's plenty of room when you've got the seat right back like this. I'm about 183 centimetres, so for me, having the seat right back, it might be a little bit far back for me. I'd probably have a tiny bit closer, but the car allows for a pretty tall driver. It's really comfortable actually, and it's a nice feeling. You've got really nice gauges and this beautiful timber steering wheel. So you've got these really outrageously sized giant circle dash pods, which kind of look cool. They're really different, at least for the era. A beautiful timber rim, as I mentioned. Alfa badge in the middle. Now, this dash top has been redone by the dashboard doctor down in Melbourne. At least this section, I believe, on the left has been done. and that's turned out really well and holding up nicely. There's a bit of attention required around these areas, some cracking and things, but it's a very interesting design, particularly for the era. When you're looking at other cars of this era, this is different, and this is what the car was all about, really. It was there at the Expo in '67 as something that was, you know, meant to be the car of the future, or the supercar of the future, and Alfa went all out with its engineers in getting this thing and making it special. And interestingly, outside the car, there's no badge that identifies it as a Montreal. The only badge on the car is this one that sits in the middle of the console in the dash, that tells us it's a Montreal. And another strange fact, they never even sold the car in North America, so it never made it to the location where it was introduced to the world as a concept car. Now, this was a grand touring car, so of course you want some space for your luggage. Now, when you look in the boot of this thing, it's not too bad. Got a fairly large parcel shelf area on top, and then you've got this sort of tri-panel that folds over, and you've got a bit of space in here, and of course you've got as well some space in front of this back parcel shelf area. Under here you've got the spare wheel, you've also got your jack and your tools in here. Original spare wheel, very early tyre on it as well by the looks of it, a Michelin. Not sure whether that's an original or not. But all pretty tidy back here and fairly practical for putting some things in if you want to go on a little trip. Having a look now at the engine. Now, this is the quad cam 2.6 litre V8. Very small capacity V8 engine, as was often done in cars in Italy, and particularly in high performance cars. Now, this engine was actually a derivative of the Alfa 33 Stradale, the race car, and they built about 18 of those units. But the Montreal was special because it was the first production V8 car, or mass production, if you can call under 4,000 units mass production. It was the first Alfa to have a V8 engine. So having a look at a couple of the interesting features, you've got your twin coil packs here. Then coming around behind the fuel intake, you've got this interesting fuel air mixture setting. And in this case, we're in Sydney, Australia, so we're set to operating above 15 degrees Celsius. But if you're living in another climate and you want to go down to 0 degrees Celsius, you flip it the other way, and that deals with the air fuel mixture to get the engine running right. And it's sort of almost, I guess, like a choke, a manual choke on the back of the engine there. Another interesting feature of this car is that it uses a vacuum system to operate the eyelids over the headlights. Now, you'd think it'd be easier just to use an electronic system to operate that, because you can see how much room this whole vacuum system takes up operating from the engine. So the seller notes that this car was actually originally fitted with factory air conditioning, and he has all of the equipment to go on the engine here. He didn't find the system effective, and it took up so much room in the front of the engine bay that he has taken it out, but it does come with the car should the purchaser want to take this back to original. So here we're looking at the infamous Spiker mechanical fuel injection system. Now, these systems are notorious for causing problems with Alfa engines over time. Apparently they need to be refurbished after about 70,000 miles. This unit is working very well and there's no issues with it, I'm told by the seller, and the car runs beautifully, and we'll show you how it runs a bit later in this video. So over this side of the engine bay you can see the Australian compliance plate, and this is a 1074 complied Montreal. The current owner has all of the documentation confirming delivery in Australia, and so this is a very rare example, Australian delivered.
And we don't touch the accelerator.
Yep.
Don't have to. It pumps.
Yep.
There's 2 fuel pumps. Now it gives it slightly, it gives a slight higher rev.
Yep, to warm
in the
up.
beginning, but within a minute it starts settling down.
Yeah, nice.
Rev.
That sounds good.
You've got various buttons here. This button is for internal lighting. You can turn off the dash lights, all of it. Just turn it off when you've got the lights on. Yep. And so you can drive fairly dark.
Yeah.
So that turns that off. And this is interior lights. You can turn those on and off. if you want at night, so you can have floor and the back on all the time if you want. There's another light just here as well. That's just for when you want to look in the rear view or at night as well.
Right.
These are the electric windows. Not many cars had electric. You can watch that if you want. Here we go. There she goes. And then you go down again. These Montreals used to have very slow windows, but we put a positive battery terminal directly to it to give it a faster speed.
I see. Yep.
And these are wipers. They've got 2 speeds, fast and slow, and then it always goes back to resting. And there's 2 different horns. Yeah, town and country. Town and country. So town and country. Now, this is the beautiful old radio.
$1.99. Bargain. Charlie's Liquor Barn, where there's always a reason to celebrate.
FM.
161.
AM, FM. Now start. Ready, set, go. This is a dry sump for the oil. It's made like that so the oil doesn't stay down the bottom. It comes back up there. It's for very low nose cars so that there's not too much oil at the bottom. And it's got a surge so the oil doesn't slosh everywhere. And it's all alloy, so it's 58 kilograms lighter than if it was cast iron.
And this is not a bad front yard to have. Which one will you take today, the silver or the gold? Looking at this silver one, this is the UK car that was recently brought over by the seller of the gold car, and they're working on some things with the transmission in this car. A few bits and pieces are out of it, transmission's out of it, but it's apparently a very original car and in solid condition. Great looking front. But that's not the subject of this video. Get in contact with Stephen if you're interested in this car. And if you've got anything you want to sell, something interesting, and you're located in Sydney, Newcastle or surrounds, get in touch with Classic Register. We'll do a video and set up an ad for your car. Thanks for watching.